Welcome to the live stream. For those of you tuning in on Christmas Eve, whatever, happy holidays, Christmas, Festivus, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Hanukkah actually starts tomorrow, just like Christmas, so wild, that very rarely happens. But yeah, first off, happy whatever the heck you celebrate, or if you don't celebrate, whatever, that's great too. Just another day for you, just another day for everybody. That's all good. First things first is yeah, I've been taking time off this month. I haven't been sick this month, but my voice really, man, I got sick technically, quote unquote. I lost my voice for like 20 days. So I finally got it back pretty good enough where I can do this without, getting all scratchy and then ruining my voice for the next day. So pretty happy about that. But yeah, unfortunately, I kind of had to take a little back seat. So I got a backlog, people contacting me with questions and stuff like that. So that's going to be rolling out, pretty much starting tomorrow. I'll be doing a couple streams tomorrow, I think. Just some questions that people had asked that I want to get to, just so I can knock it off my list. And as usual, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button. Like I said, I plan this for 8 p.m., but sometimes I do it early, and it's 6:15 right now. Here I am. Let's see, what else? TheSoftSpokenShaman@gmail.com is the place to hit me up and contact me if you've got questions. If you want to check out my books, whatever, that's the place to hit me up. Do that if you so choose. So the topic today is based off of, kind of my TikTok feed. Now, first things first, this has nothing to do with the topic at hand, but I don't know if any of you have noticed, maybe it's just my feed, but my TikTok feed is a mixture of videos and then people going live. And it is a progression of women with small nose rings, and then progressively the nose rings on the women get bigger, like those big rings that are in the middle of their nose. And I screenshotted this and I'll post it on my community tab. No hate, you do this if you want, but there was a woman who had the largest nose ring I've ever seen in my life. It was like, I was wondering, how does she keep her head level? You know what I mean? It was one of those things, I just don't know how she does it. The nose ring, it looked like it was weighted. It looked like that had to weigh at least a pound. And now, a pound hanging from your nose, that's a big deal. So anyways, I don't know if you've been seeing this out in the wild in real life or on the internet too, but I was just like flabbergasted when I saw this. This is a humongous nose ring. It was like, basically wearing like a wedding ring, like a celebrity's wedding ring with a big old rock on it, from her nose. So that's what my TikTok FYP is doing these days. But anyways, what I saw a small video today, and I ended up watching a documentary. And it's about people living in shopping malls. Now, you all are used to, or you've seen these kind of outdoor luxury malls where, on the ground floor are shops, stores, and above that are apartment buildings, condos, whatever you want to call them. You've all seen those before. That's not what I'm talking about, because while that is dystopian AF, it's expected. We see them everywhere. But what's happening now is there's old defunct shopping malls where they're literally converting the old storefronts into apartments. And so this documentary was about an old shopping mall in Providence, Rhode Island. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with New England, Providence, now there are some beautiful parts of Rhode Island, but Providence is pretty much the butthole of New England. Add to that Hartford, Connecticut. It's the butthole of New England. It's really not too much to do in Providence. Anyways, there's a defunct shopping mall there, and basically like the first floor in the shopping mall still has stores that I guess people go to, and the second floor of the mall is apartments. So people literally live in the mall. Now, this is kind of like a late stage capitalism nightmare. It's like, it's like when people say, hey, why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer, right? It's the same thing. It's like, hey, why don't you live in the mall? If you like consumerism that much, if you like the fake holly jolly Christmas so much, why don't you just live in the mall, right? And now that's something you can do. Now, if you're a millennial like me, you'll remember back in the 90s, the mall was popping, man. Like, you didn't have to be a consumerist slave-minded person to enjoy the mall in the 90s. Many of you know the malls were literally constructed in the shape of churches with steeples and large skylights and stained glass and stuff like that to make it an enjoyable peak experience. But I remember, I grew up in and outside of Chicago. I remember going to, Fox Valley Mall, Oak Brook Mall. I can't recall the name of it. There was the second largest mall in America outside of the Mall of America was in Schaumburg, Illinois. We used to go to that mall too. And on the weekend, man, it used to be kind of like an electrifying experience because there were so many human beings and there were so many things to do other than shop. There were, like places to game. There were just things to do. It wasn't just old people walking around for exercise. Back in the 90s, the mall kind of gave off a vibe similar to, if you watch Stranger Things, on Netflix or whatever, that kind of iconic sort of retro feeling, where there was electricity, there was a buzz. You could go to the mall back then and you could feel that. And it was palpable. Again, back in the 90s, the mall wasn't just for shopping. It was literally the place to go hang out with your friends. When I was in high school, when I was in middle school, it was just you would go to the mall and hang out with your friends. Because even if you weren't shopping, there were still things to do. Or just the fun of walking around and doing your thing. That was a thing too. And we all enjoyed that. But nowadays, that is gone. And now, obviously the mall is just a dinosaur. It's a dinosaur of what was in the past. The heyday of, capitalism when it kind of worked. It was enjoyable. And it's just not like that anymore, unfortunately. So now there are people living in the mall, 100%. There are people actually living in the mall. And so this documentary talked about this woman. She said, oh, it's great. I love living in this mall because, downstairs I get my hair cut at the salon and yada, yada, yada. And you could see looking at this woman's face, she was like shell-shocked. You could tell her face was betraying the energy of like, what happened to my life? Where'd it go? Why is my life like this right now? And, to me at least, living in a mall does seem quite dystopian. There should be a wall between, like your residence, where you live, the peace and quiet of that, and then commerce, And she was saying that sometimes it's weird. Sometimes you have to get used to the fact that people will walk near the door of your apartment because they're shoppers or they're in this public domain, which is the mall. And you'll get people walking by sometimes. So she's like, yeah, I have to have good blinds and good drapes because sometimes people will walk by. And sometimes random people will knock on her door because she lives in the dang mall. The other thing, too, is she was saying that, how they had to, when they were deciding to turn this mall into like mixed use, commercial and residential, they decided that when they were going to allow people to live in these, apartments in the mall, well, you can't have an open flame. So there's no open flame cooking. There's no gas lines for cooking. So, and even she said that you couldn't have an induction cooktop or an electric cooktop. So basically what she was saying is that she would have to plug in a hot plate to cook food or, use a crock pot or a Nutra, whatever the heck it's called, and that's kind of even more dystopian where you're living in the mall, you got an apartment in the mall, but you can't even cook food. So that to me, that makes sense. Like you're living in the mall, it's kind of like not a place you'd want to live and you can't even cook your own food. So you're living in the mall, you've probably got to go out to eat, get takeout all the time. I mean, it sounds like hell to me. Absolutely sounds like hell to me. But the documentary, they go into, different individuals, different types of individuals that live in the mall. This lady in Providence, she was, I don't know, maybe late 20s, early 30s, career-oriented woman, Then they documented, an older guy, who was in his late 40s or early 50s, and he was like a janitor or something like that, And they talked about, there was a college student living in the mall. And so you kind of got a slice of life of all these different types of people living in the mall. And the common thread with all these people is they seemed like they're like with their mouth, with their lips, they're like, oh yeah, it's great. I really like living here. It's centrally located. But their face betrays them. And their face lets you know that they really don't like living there, that there's something wrong, that they know that they made the wrong choice. And this is a new phenomenon. We don't see this all that much still. People living in old shopping malls. And to be fair, these are not squatters. These are people who are paying rent to live in, old storefronts that were converted into apartments. So it's not like they're squatters, I mean, they are paying rent and all that, but it's just weird. You're looking at these people, you're listening to them talk, and you can tell that they're just like, they're, it feels like they're ghosts haunting their life. Like they've passed on and they're like, why do I live in a mall? This is weird. It's the strangest thing. And so I don't know the name of the documentary. I'll put it on my community tab. I'd recommend watching it because it's a good way to pass the time, but it's also just really, really eerie to show the different ways that people are adapting to, this late stage capitalism, the different ways people are adapting and how it's harming them. It's like a silent weapon. It's like a silent poison. Where they're like, oh yeah, my life's great. It's super cool. I love living in the mall. I'm centrally located to everything. But yet their face is showing like this forlorn sort of expression, like they're a prisoner of war almost. It is absolutely wild. What living in the mall, I guess, can do to a person. It just, I don't know. Can you imagine living in a mall where, there's like some random cell phone kiosk, then there's a Spencer's Gifts, and there's like a random food court that's half defunct, like I couldn't imagine it, I think that the mall is such an eerie sort of zombie-like sort of structure now that it's okay to step into from time to time. Like I remember when I was living in Arizona, our mall was kind of popping a little bit. There were some things there. But the reason to go to our mall was the food court. The food court was fire. We had a Guamanian. Is it how you say it? I don't know. No, that's not the word. Chimea? No, that's not it. Guam cuisine. There was a guy from Guam who was selling his cuisine in the food court. We had like teriyaki place. We had all sorts of good places in our food court at that mall. And I noticed the same thing too over here in Northwest Arkansas. We've got the Northwest Arkansas Mall over here in Fayetteville. And the mall is kind of popping. They got a few flagship stores like a Dillard's, I guess, and some other, stores that people actually go to. But the best reason to go to that mall is the food court. The food is fire. So I think you're noticing it's really interesting how a lot of these malls are dinosaurs. There's really not a lot of commerce going on. But what you will notice is the way that they're adapting is they're bringing in, individuals, small businesses, maybe people who have had food trucks who are now trying to develop into a brick and mortar business. You're noticing that's a thing now. And so these people are transitioning from food truck to a brick and mortar in the mall. And so I've seen some success stories with this that are really cool. So that's kind of how I've seen these malls continue existing in 2024 into 2025. It's just, people selling food, boutique sort of food, and that's doing it. But I've never lived near a mall where people actually live in it. I've been down to, I have family in Dallas and Austin, Texas. And both in Dallas and Austin, there are these large kind of like high-end outdoor lifestyle complex malls, outdoor walkable malls. And they all have apartments, in the upper levels. And they're expensive apartments. But I always said to myself, if you have money like that, why wouldn't you want to, of course, get a house instead. But if you're not going to do that, why not just live in a quiet, cozy apartment complex? Why do you want to live in a shopping center? I mean, shopping centers nowadays is where people, have meltdowns. People crash out. People pow pow. They do things like that. Why would you want to live in a place like that? I mean, to me, it's just like a safety concern almost, So that's always been a wild thing to me is why people would live at an apartment in a shopping center or complex. It's never made any sense to me because the thing is, if you got the disposable money to be able to afford to live in those apartments, then you've got the money to spend on gas. So why not live in a peaceful environment than just spend the money on gas to go into the central business district or the shopping mall when you need it? I don't know. People are nuts. They don't make any sense, and that's what it is. Anyways, that's all the time I have for you today. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification button, and once again, on this channel, everything I do is sponsored content. So if you'd like to see a video, you can email me at thesoftspokenshaman@gmail.com with whatever question or comment you have that you want responded to, and I'll